Hello and welcome. I bet you weren't expecting a video today, and nor was I, but I have a few things that I want to say, and, Johan's been yapping again, so we're going to cover that. First of all, I made a video on Sunday, and I had this image in it, and in my head, when I was talking about what was in this image, in my head, I said that this was Control. This map mode is Control. It is the Control map mode. What came out of my mouth was, I think I said development. It's not development, it's Control. It's the Control map mode. The river is showing Control. Also, I didn't know that the Donau River was the Danube River. I thought the Donau was a tributary that fed into the Danube. So I screwed up there. I apologize. Sometimes I make mistakes, but I will always own up to them, and we move on from there. Now on to, what I was actually going to make this video because of, and that is this thread here. This is a seemingly innocuous thread. Please make sure the game is finished at release, and as you can tell, there were a certain amount of people that felt that this thread was a little bit silly. Paradox managers, when the community ambassador brings this post to their attention. Well, I guess this was brought to their attention. I'm not sure if it was a community ambassador that brought this to their attention, because I don't think EU5 currently has one. But it was brought to the attention of Johan, at least, who decided that instead of laughing, he was going to actually respond properly. So I want to show some of these responses, because they're actually really insightful. Saying, if the game will not require any DLC, it'll be more expensive and we'll get EU6 2 years later as a new release at full price. I understand the hate towards the excessive DLCs, but to be honest, if the DLCs provide good content and well enough price, then there's nothing inherently bad about them. Johan's response here, a new grand strategy game every year, like back in 2002 to 2005. Yeah, there was a lot of people basically in this thread saying that they were not content with the current Paradox DLC model, not content with how many DLCs that EU4 currently has. If you take away the sale that they currently have going, which is insane, and if you haven't got Paradox DLCs right now, go and grab the ultimate sexy bundle thing they have. Like the whole game and all its DLC is like 80 quid or something, which is kind of crazy. But without that sale, it's usually like 200, 300. I actually don't know, I haven't looked in a while. And yeah, someone coming into the game fresh will look at that price and think, oh my god, that is a terrible DLC model. That is crazy. For me, I played this game for 10 years, and while I will admit I have been getting DLCs from Paradox for free for quite a while now, before I started getting that, I think Third Rome was the first DLC I got for free. Before that, I was buying the DLCs, and I was relatively content doing so. I am in favor of the DLC model. I think the amount of free content that come with each DLC being paid for by the DLC, unless that DLC is kind of trash, I think they're generally positive, and their new model is different anyway. The new model is mechanics go in the base game in that free update that the DLC pays for, and the DLC will be cosmetic things, or maybe mission trees, or something along those lines. Things that won't affect the game for countries that aren't affected by the DLC. Essentially, that's the way I see it. I think that's a good system, that's a decent model, and yeah, I don't think there's any reason right now to complain about DLCs or worry about, oh my god, Paradox are just gonna shovel DLC into the game, and the game won't be finished until several DLCs come out. I don't see that being the case. But anyway, that was why there was an argument here, and yeah, the alternative to DLC model is a new game every year. We're not turning into EA. That would be stupid. But anyway, moving on. I don't agree with the DLC take of the original poster, but I do agree about its completeness. If EU5 comes out like Imperator did, the game will die within months. Core features have to be there. Has to be at least as polished as EU4, even if not everything is implemented yet. Enough flavor has to exist, otherwise the nations will feel the same, which would be extremely detrimental to the game. I bought Imperator on release. It's arguably better than EU4. But due to that lack of flavor and polish, I dropped the game and never touched it again. That's a shame. they pretty much fixed the main issues, but I don't feel like getting back into it due to the inexperience. That is, I mean, it's a fair point. Imperator on release was not for everybody, and there was a lot of problems. And Johan agrees here as well. This development cycle for EU5 is different. Imperator was done in 16 months, and we know that EU5 has been in development for a much, much longer time. The team going beyond 5 to 6 people only lasts 10 months for Imperator. It's crazy. Kind of how EU4 was 12 years ago. Project Caesar has been more or less playable using the Johan debug UI since the autumn of 2020, and they've been working for over 4 years now, making sure they've got enough features and content. So what I glean from this is that what Johan said on Reddit all that time ago, it's probably entirely true and accurate. And here it is. Apologies if your screen just kind of blinded you. Basically saying that EU5, or Project Caesar, will have an equivalent amount of content to EU4 now, as in EU4 with that 12 years of development. How you judge what content is worth. So, how much content would a jihad mechanic be worth? But essentially for Johan, if they judge the amount of countries that have fun and deep experience levels on par with Sweden and EU4, then they have matched that for Project Caesar, which I think is obviously kind of fantastic. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of content. It looks like there's going to be a lot of content, which is awesome. With more flavor, I mean enough nations that feel different. This is what he wants from the game. If it's just, say, 15 to 20 nations, that's not enough. At least 2 or 3 per region, getting decent amounts of content on par with Sweden and EU4, for example. So all of these areas he's mentioning. They have reached their goals already to have 60 or more countries with content on par with England in EU4. And I would argue, especially after the Rule Britannia DLC, England has more Actually, no. The latest DLC did a bunch of stuff to England as well. Was it Emperor that added the dual monarchy path? England has a ton of content in EU4 right now. If they have 60 plus countries with content on par with England in EU4, that is a lot. That is actually ridiculously good, in my opinion. Includes unique diplomatic actions, units, buildings, reforms, privileges, laws, advances, historical events, and much more. I like that. I think that's great. Apparently asking for a game that is finished and complete at release and then adding additional optional content post-release is asking far too much. This is the original poster, and probably responding to people laughing at his post, to be fair. And I'm guilty of it as well. I did have a little dig. I apologize. It's almost like we're buying an early access game and having to pay for every update. I disagree with this. This is not how I see EU4 at all. I see EU4 release version as a complete game that was then added onto. But Johan's saying here, he agrees that a game should feel finished and complete. I think where I disagree with this Moro de la Paz is that EU4 was a complete game on release. Asking for a full game on release doesn't mean they need to trash their business model, so the DLC thing. On the contrary, their business model is great for the game's longevity. I agree. The fact that they decide to release their games with missing basic features that they haven't add years later is what bugs me honestly, and this is what I think is... I'm just going to say it, and I apologize if this is mean-spirited, but I think this is ignorance. I really do. There is nothing in the game today that was, oh, you know what? We have this idea for a feature, a mechanic, a thing. How about we just hold off on it and add it in a DLC later? Because then we can make money. Like, that's basically how this comes across, this argument. It's not a missing basic feature. You know, something that was added in Art of War, or development that was added in Common Sense. It's not a missing basic feature that was missing from the base game when EU4 was first released. That's just, I don't know. I feel like that's so silly to make that argument. I just don't understand it at all. He loves the DLCs. He'd buy them all if he could, but the releases take so long over the years. And with them bring so many essential features for the basic game experience that I'd much rather sell the game complete at the start. That's you're basically asking them to not release the game until they come up with all of the ideas that they ever will have during the game's lifespan. And and then put them in the game before release. Like, it makes no sense. This is completely illogical. And then add uniqueness and flavors to each region of the world individually. I mean, sure, but there's going to be mechanics that are invented in the minds of the developers after release. That just happens. Johan's got a really good response here, though. For the last 3 games, he was the director for, and he can't speak for other people, Victoria 2, EU4, and Imperator. None of them had any cut features at release. If we go back to the alpha milestone, we'll come back to what that is in a second, and compare the 1.0 release, you'd find insane amounts of features added. So, an alpha deadline is when you should have all of the features finished and no feature should ever be added after it, as that adds risks to schedules for art, QA, balance, AI, etc. So, basically what he did was, they have the alpha release, no more features added after this. And then Johan stresses out his producers with, this is a cool idea, we're adding it. Yeah, I think Johan's got the right idea when it comes to game development. And I think the only reason Imperator failed is he had 16 months only of development time and a small team to do it. It was not a flagship release like, say, Victoria 3 was that took, I don't know, like 8 years or something. Like CK3 was, you know, I don't know what the development time of CK3 was, but it had a big team. And it looks like, while we don't know the exact numbers, it looks like Tinto has a big team there, and obviously some are working on EU4 with content, with flavor and such, and with maintenance, and then some are working on EU5. We don't know the split there. We don't know what balance that is, so we can't say how many people are working on Project Caesar right now, but it's a few. It's a fair few, and they've been working on it for, at the very least, 5 years, right? So, EU4 in its current state, for example, probably around 14 years of total development time now. You can't match that with a new release. Which is a fair point to make. Calendar years, though, and man years are not always the same thing. For a lot of time, EU4 used to have 2 to 3 programmers, 1 to 2 content designers, 1 producer, 1 or 2 artists, 1 or 2 QA, and a designer or a game designer person. These days, games are more complex to make and teams are much, much larger. So yeah, that's basically it. This is basically what Imperator had. Not a huge team. Maybe that's why it failed. It looks like Project Caesar has a much, much bigger team. So yeah, I think this is a really, really decent point to make about, you know, the time difference depends on how many people you got working on the game. So Amadeo is saying, oh, it's a lot. Do you personally think that having all of these, without having to rely on mission trees, and he's talking about the 60 plus countries, without having to rely on mission trees like EU4 did, is enough for the playbase's desire for flavor and variety? I'm asking genuinely, since it seems that Project Caesar will likely not have many mission trees at launch. I mean, I feel like there's not a whole lot of... I don't see where you're getting this from. It seems it would likely not have. Like, where do you get this information? It won't rely on them, and it's possible that the players react negatively to that. I don't think it will rely on them, but I don't think the players are going to react negatively. It's a risk, but when they started Project Caesar in the spring of 2020, mission trees were really not a big thing in any of the grand strategy games that they made. Their critiques of mission trees is that they remove the exploration of a beautiful world, I would imagine this is supposed to be, to instead give you a guided path through parts of it. We know that mission trees are going to be in the game. We know that mission trees are going to be in EU5, Project Caesar. And we know that they are based on the Imperator style, which is basically you get multiple mission trees per country. Some of them dynamically produced, like Conquest of a region or something. And a flavorful, unique mission tree can certainly fit within these Imperator style mission trees. So every country will have multiple mission trees. They will just be shared. There will be say, all of the Catholics will have maybe a Catholic mission tree. All the people in the HRE will have a HRE mission tree. All the people that have taken some advances to go colonial will have a colonial mission tree, etc., etc. And that will be different between countries, right? You know, England's mission trees will be different from if you are playing as the Roman Empire, for example. But then there will be the unique mission trees on top of that. It doesn't replace that. It will be on top of that with this Imperator-style system. And I think that is a really, really good system. I don't think we're going to get mission trees as a crutch, and I think, for the most part, EU4 doesn't act that way, but for certain few examples. I think Austria, for example, is a terrible mission tree in EU4 right now. Anything that gives you free personal unions or directs you to get personal unions, I think, is really, really bad. But there's not a whole lot of examples of that, and for the most part, I'm pretty happy with how mission trees are in EU4. As long as they're not too overpowered, let's say, like Persia. But yeah, I do think this is a good critique of mission trees. Like, it is guiding you through the game rather than letting you explore it, and there is a certain element of freedom to not having a mission tree that a mission tree does bite into, but is that bite more beneficial than not having it? I mean, that is a personal subjective opinion, and you know, you'll get a different answer from everyone you ask that to. It's been a long time, but I remember EU4 being so simple without Art of War. Ironically, Art of War was designed 100% from ideas that they got playing dev clashes. I used to love these. I hope they return for EU5. And then going to the pub and thinking how to improve the experience. Lots of fun evenings with Wiz, who is now the project lead on Victoria 3, and Groogy, who is no longer at Paradox. I think he's at DICE, but I can't confirm that either way. I don't recall what company he's in. And many more. I really hope we get the dev clashes. And hey, if they need a caster, you know, I've got a little bit of experience with that. I could totally, I'd step in. Johan, please. But oh, that'd be fun. Jesus Christ is in relation to the 60+ mission, 60+ nations getting EU4 England level content. And there are more countries with content than just those. It's not just they've put all of the content they've made has gone to those 60 and everyone else can get fucked. It's just those 60 have England level, and then there are other countries that have maybe lesser level. Maybe they're getting, I don't know, Byzantium level. I don't know. If I can ask, how many people are working on Project Caesar? It baffles me in Imperative Rome they were so few, and they'd like to see the contrast. They're far more than in Imperative, but they can't. Like, he cannot comment on exactly how many. And that's it. That is all I have time for today. I just thought that this deserved its own little piece, because this is information I wanted to put out, but it is not something I wanted to dilute the, you know, tomorrow's dev diary with, because that's going to be something entirely new and unique, and something we haven't seen before. So I felt this needed its own video, and it should have gone in, you know, beforehand, and also make my corrections to what I'd said in the previous one. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. If you'd like to support what I do here in bringing you the Project Caesar information directly to you and yapping about it and giving my own thoughts and opinions on things, say subscribe. It really helps me out, and I would like more subscribers. That would be beautiful. Likes and comments are appreciated, and I will see you tomorrow for something brand new. I'm exceptionally excited for tomorrow's Tinto Talks. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.